Hey, welcome to the video. I appreciate you checking it out. I'm going to try to be as well paced as possible in this video, and I'm going to preface you by saying I'm going to be bringing up information that I've been afraid to bring up, and it's since like 2018 or 2019. I can't remember exactly that I actually went to the psych ward a couple times for this information, and you might understand why. So whatever comes out here, if there's even a 1% sliver of truth in it, whoever gets their hands on it, please, in the name of Jesus and in the name of the Father in heaven, do not use it for anything other than taking care of humankind or the world in general. Okay, so I'm just going to get on with it here. I had seen in my vision a certain set of things, and I'll start with this one, and I'll hopefully make this all make sense. But the first one I'm going to say is I saw that DNA, our strands of DNA, actually operate basically in the same way that inductors do. And, inductors are things that you can pass a magnet through to change the magnetic flux in order to create voltage. And it's because the inductor, you got to give me a break. I know some engineers gonna be like, what are you talking about? It resists the change or something like, something. It resists change. I don't know if it's type bindings or something like that, but you can create voltage by changing the magnetic flux going through it. But our DNA does much the same in that, or some sort of concept thereof, and delivering electronic signals to where they're supposed to be. Now, a hypothesis on that might actually help to prove this that I had, not the right word for it, is that if you think about our healing processes, just get a cut on your skin, the scabbing process. And maybe there's already an answer for this, but this is what kind of helped confirm it to me. The idea is that the system actually responds more to the outside world than we thought it did. It doesn't just like push the things from the inside. It actually responds to the change in tone, I'll call it. It calls for specific pieces based on what it's receiving in the reception. Like that pain response that you get is actually a feeling of like the short circuiting or something. And it slowly, it like the things you eat, the things you consume, the minerals and stuff like that are broken down into cations and anions. Um, Perhaps other ways to explain it. I'm not, I'm still, stay with me on this. It breaks them down into cations, anions, positive or negative ions. And so as the cut, as the circuitry is interacting with, it's creating a certain draw for specific things. And it goes and it pushes the things there. Not pushes, it technically pulls, I guess. um, and it puts things there. And then as the scab develops, it has a specific shielding from what was like going in there. It's like the attenuation of it. It's the same thing that our skin does, kind of. It has the shielding to the outside everything. And that scab does a certain thing. So it's like really high pitch, and this is probably wrong, but maybe to help understand, it's really high pitch, and then it starts scabbing, and then the pitch changes based on the interaction with the outside stuff until there's a full scab, and it's no longer doing that. And then that's what is part of the healing process. Oh dear Lord, let me not be so far off base. Dear Lord. So yeah, um, part of what's sprigging this, I started signing up. I was doing the engineering school, and I had my vision from God, and I was not able to get myself back on track because I was experiencing miracles in my environment. I went out in the middle of winter, and um, as I was following what God was showing me, because I'm trying to understand, He's responding literally to my thoughts. Like God knows our thoughts, you guys. Okay, don't think that you ever get away with anything like, oh, they don't know. No, God's able to know what you thought and how you acted based on what you thought, and that's where the true judgment of the Lord is going to come in. So He's responding to my thoughts, and as I'm following what He's showing me, and like basically His confirmation that, yep, You understood right. I was warm in the middle of winter, and there was like snow disappearing and flowers and everything in full bloom as I'm basically going. And I'm like following a trail, walking around the winter, and you know, that was one of the situations where I ended up back in another psych ward because what's this crazy guy doing wandering around like this? Um, I've also had like a candle. These are the ones that are very easy for me to describe to people. And how I know that God like knows it, like the Bible says that he knows our thoughts. I forget who even writes that. Like, you know, my thoughts. It sounds like something that was from David. Um, I'm like, he's showing me a sign, and I'm like, there's this candle in a box, right? And I took it out, and I'm kind of trying to figure out what he's doing. And he's like, kind of giving me slight responses. Um, and I set the candle back in the box, closed it. It wasn't lit at all. And then he kind of gives me a sign and starts like showing me specific things in a magazine and speaking to me. And when I'm understanding what he's saying, much in the way like the response of the cold weather flower bloom, the springtime bloom, um, I would see the box beginning to show signs as if it like the candle on side were in fire, right? And he was telling me to burn with insight, to burn with insight. Um, and that's how he was showing me when I was, following along and like truly dedicating myself to this path that I've been on now, where I am following nothing but what God has to say to me, trying to do, doing my best. All right, now where off course did I get here? Um, that was from the school thing. So I stopped engineering school, started dealing with these signs, made it very difficult to do the stuff that I was doing. But that was part of God's plan. And he's been working with me this whole time. And so now I've been trying to go back to school for psychology. He gave me a sign to go take psychology. Um, and I did. And uh, what I'm finding out now is that there is intentional or unintentional a barrier between the sciences in this world and our study of ourselves, psychology or psychiatry. I noticed this when I went to like transfer some of my credits. Like, she was like, well, maybe we could look at getting you into an engineering minor and you could take some of these credits that you had from before and apply them here. And they just didn't work. And that's when I realized God was showing me like all of our different fields are so separate. And this is part of what he originally had told me too, is that we need to be sharing information better. So there's such there's a distinction between the fields that are studying these sciences and the fields that are studying ourselves in such a way that we have a barrier in between understanding what we're seeing. And some of you who are maybe multi-field professionals can attest to um, people in physics, people in engineering, mechanical or electrical, um, people in chemistry. They're all conceptually, they're talking about really at a certain level the same concepts, especially when you start taking things that you're studying and placing them into dimensional analysis using graphs and things like that, or multi 3D or 4D, whatever dimension you end up going to. You start looking at these things from like angles and how they're adjacent to each other, and these really high level fields are saying the same thing but using different words to describe the same concepts. And there's like a miss between, wait, we're actually all saying like this concept is the same thing across all these fields. I'm sure there's some very intelligent people who have already like noticed that, or maybe not. I'm not like super smart. Maybe just the right circumstances in life led somebody to notice this stuff. Um, but they're saying the same things, and then these concepts actually apply to us very much as well. There's a concept in force resolution. I use the word resolution, take it as like equation, a solving kind of a thing, but how everything looks then at the end, like how it resolves, what it resolves into, is what I'm saying. So there's what they call a moment when you're doing calculations of how forces are applied, and when you're thinking about just a 2D plane, and you're like trying to look at a force that's just being applied here, um, it's kind of straightforward. We use gravity and then whatever across the arm on it, but there's a way to look at it in what they call a moment arm. And again, don't land base me for this, please. Um, but if you take and instead of it being a two-dimensional analysis, then you turn it 90 degrees, and you're able to take a force, and it interacts in a moment, they call it, in a circular force. And you can take and then translate that circular force any length along what you're looking at, um, and then resolve it back to two dimensions to know what the impact of that force is somewhere else. And then so I'm going to start mixing in a lot of stuff. I'm sorry, lots of things have been mixed into my head as well. So, with it being called a moment, this is where God started to reveal to me that even in the inspiration for the things that we say, how we choose to define things or what words make sense to us, He's the one inspiring these things. The concept of a moment, doing that in physics, and then you take and you look at all of our time, our history, and time isn't actually, maybe I'll leave that. Time isn't actually linear. Let's not get on that right now. Maybe I'll leave that. It just appears linear to us because of how we're going through it. But if you look at the moment in time, the moment of creation, the moment Jesus sacrificed himself, the moment Jesus returns, like all of these are actually occurring at the same moment, the same point in time, because they're on a moment. They're on this whole thing that's connected. And we're going to start revealing this thing in quantum mechanics. You want to play with quantum mechanics? Use your faith. Praying for things that you haven't checked into. Not looking into stuff because you trust God is going to fix or repair things. It's the idea of like Schrodinger's cat in a box, right? If you observe it, then you know what it is. It's either dead or alive. But until that point in time, that box is sealed. And then it's in what do they call it? A superposition of two states. That's what faith is. This ability to just trust and not look into something, not measure it any which way. That's what faith and prayer and stuff like that do. So a moment, all that time. I'm sorry. This has happened to me too ever since the situation. Um, so forgive me for that, man. Don't worry about it. Don't mind it none. Shoot, what was I about to say? The superposition of states. When they did the test, the slit theory test, the electron slit theory. I'm sure that I think the name's different from that, but if you have any familiarity, it's measuring of where an electron is going to go, and it started to create the open conversation about whether the electron is um, a particle or if it acts as a wave. And the thing that ends up determining whether it does that or not is observation. It acts in what they would call a wave. It could land in any place, any part between like here and here, basically because of like the amount of angular position it can take, or it acts as a particle if it's like observed. And that's part of the faith playing in quantum. That's like it's a proof that observation solidifies what this world is when you're looking at it. And another thing that kind of like um I think is super important to understand about it is that observation doesn't just come from a person viewing it. We absolutely do it too. We resolve the force that particle is. We resolve the world based on what we observe, right? But it's also done by things like a camera. They can just watch it with a camera, and that also defines it of what it's going to be. Now, whether it's the camera itself or it's like now that's a piece of evidence, and then like that's what resolves all the stuff down to it, I don't know. But forms of observation, camera, recording, microphone, human interaction, these are ways of resolving that, what it's going to be. And it sets it into a state of existence. It's super hard to define what prayer does or what faith does. And a big part of it is because you leave that stuff alone and you let God manage the situation to the best that we could even think of, even if it's not for our best benefit at the time. Like he's fixing all these things, he's setting all this stuff in motion. But it's extremely difficult to define that, and scientists have been, denying the existence of God for a long time because, we can't prove it. We can't prove God. Well, set up an experiment. You got to start following God's rules because these are the parameters for what he says for proving his stuff. But we got confused. Well, actually, Satan confused us. No, we have to define it differently. We can't, or whatever. No, follow his rules, and we'll start to see a change in the world. This world is way too complex. This is the level that only God can manage. We can't control for these experiments in humanity. We can only do what God said and then see if we notice the difference. I promise you, you do. You will. You will notice it. So God is the actuator of all these changes. He affects all the change through our faith. My dad once told me, if you don't know how to fix something, you leave it alone. And that ended up, it was like, he said it just about, he's a very mechanically inclined person. And so it's about fixing stuff, but conceptually, when that's applied to all of this world, us as people, how many times have we've been, we're caught red-handed trying to fix something that we don't have the knowledge for. Instead of leaving it in God's hand in faith to correct it, to fix it, we try to do it. And we can only do it to this level, especially when we're not operating on trying to listen to the Lord as he guides us as well. God forgive us for that too. I'll leave one last one. And it's part of the resolution, or how these moments resolve, how prophecy looks, not just in word, but how it looks when God is ordained and orchestrating something that is to be essential to the world of understanding. If you think about a cross, like Jesus on the cross, that's the same as a two-dimensional coordinate, right? Just think about it in two dimensions at this point in time. And he was hung with his arms on the two, right? So there's the X dimension, right? He's on there. And the 0 point is right in between those two as they go. So when he was first up there, or how we're often depicted it, right? He has his head above the zero the zero on the Y dimension, right? At however you want to measure it, but it's above that. And as he's going, and then eventually we got his depiction where he's when he finally when he finally gave out and he asks for us to be forgiven. Another image that we have the depiction of him afterwards as he's slumped down below. And the connection of Jesus' understandings that he was trying to bring to us as best he could with what everybody knew at the time. His mind was above, connected with the Father in heaven. And when the last amount of his life drained, and his whole body returned down to where we exist, to the plane where we're at. Asking for us to be forgiven, and all the while, so we drop down to the plane where we exist. All right, I'll just leave it at that. God bless you. I hope that some of this is important. Take care.